Welcome to the Healing Trauma Podcast. My name is Monique Koven, and I'm the host of the Healing Trauma Podcast. On this podcast, you will hear from trauma experts in the field, sharing ways that we can understand trauma, how it impacts us, and more importantly, how we can move forward, how we can begin to feel safe in our bodies, in our relationships, and in the world. You're also going to hear from trauma survivors and how they are healing and what is helping them move forward. You are so welcome here, and we're glad that you're joining us today. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
I have been really loving the kind of work that you do. I'm such a believer in creating a safe space for our children to grow up in, and being a trauma survivor and having the experience of knowing what it's like to live with the impact of trauma and then the dysregulation that we carry. It's so important to understand what our children need for to be able to grow into children that feel safe in their home with their caregivers. I know that it is so important to the listeners who are parents because they want to do something different. They want to give their children what they didn't have. And when I parented, I essentially said, I'm just going to do the opposite of what was done to me. I just kind of innately went along. I know there's so much information that could have been helpful about attachment and what is needed. That's why I was so attracted to your work. I know you're passionate about empowering parents to be able to provide their children with a safe experience in parenting. I'll introduce you. Or maybe better yet, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Well, thank you so much. And first of all, before I even get into who I am, I want you to know that it is truly never too late to heal. Obviously, you and I are still doing this work well into our adult lives. So whether someone is listening who doesn't even have kids yet and thinks, well, maybe I will someday, or maybe I'm just here because I want to heal my inner child, or somebody who's already in the daily throes of parenting, I want you to know that everything I do is my sincere attempt to support you no matter where you are on your parenting journey. So with that aside, I am Sarah Moore, middle initial R. If you Google Sarah Moore, you get 10 million of my closest friends. So Sarah Moore, founder of Dandelion Seeds Positive Parenting, author of a book called Peaceful Discipline, and the president of the board for the American Society for the Positive Care of Children. And above and beyond those credentials, so to speak, I am also a trauma survivor and a cycle breaker. So I know firsthand the amount of work that goes into healing ourselves to a point where we can break those cycles and create a healthier environment, not just outside of our body, but also within our body, so we can actually feel the peace that we want to when we are going about our daily life, especially in the presence of others who are paying attention, and specifically in this case, our kids.
If I would think of myself as a young mom, I was doing a lot of acting because I didn't understand that children can read the language. So I could be saying something, but inside I think they could feel some of that anxiety, even though I'm acting all like I got it all together. I love what you said about peace.
Thank you. And you touched on something really important, by the way. You're absolutely right. Kids do pick up our authentic emotional state. It's actually a thing called neuroception, or some people call it interoception. There's a minor difference between those two septions, but the general theme is that kids will pay much more attention to what they believe to be true than what they actually hear us saying. And we never really outgrow this. We are constantly, this is the definition of neuroception, we are constantly scanning the room, so to speak, to ask the question, am I safe or am I not safe? So yes, the words matter, but our inner state is absolutely a big part of it. So thank you for normalizing that. Sometimes it's in conflict and sometimes it's aligned, but it's part of the work too.
What you're saying is huge. That's one of the pieces that was so helpful to me and to trauma survivors, is when we started to understand that let's understand that it's not all about your psychology. Let's go downstairs and start downstairs, meaning instead of living all up in the head, and understanding there's a whole life here, and what's happening down here in our body and our nervous system is extremely important. And that's where we live from. That's our survival space. That's also the space where we feel good stuff too and connection, but it's all here, not here. And I love that now, even as we're going to talk about parenting and conscious parenting or safe parenting or whatever title we want to use, we're understanding the importance of understanding this nervous system of ours and how it plays into all of this.
Absolutely. And personally, I love the visual of going downstairs to get into our body. That is so beautiful. I might borrow that if you don't mind, because that's just
Go ahead. Go ahead. It's yeah. And so I love that you said that. And I think that when it comes to attachment, we can say, I'm going to attach to my child, and we could be not understanding the child is picking up those cues. And those cues are not only visual, they're asking themselves, is this a safe experience for me to connect to? You know, and how do they know that? Not by thinking it so much as experiencing it.
Yes, that's huge. And here's one of the things that we actually know about secure attachment. With that very perspective in mind, all kids, every single child on the planet is born wired, pre-wired, pre-planned, predestined to having a secure attachment with their primary caregiver or parent. And where this can actually get really tricky is knowing that we are pre-wired for secure attachment. We will do almost anything to see our parent. I'm going to summarize, knowing there are lots of caregivers out there, but I'm going to call it parents for shorthand. Every parent may or may not be operating in a way that is worthy of that secure attachment. But because children need their parents for survival, for guidance, for the basic necessities of life for a really good long time, it's in a child's best interest to look the other way when the parent does treat them poorly, because they're still really the only shot they have at survival. So it's part of the reason that particularly all of us who are trauma survivors oftentimes don't do the healing work and continue to justify the things that our parents did to us, because in our heart of hearts, we always really wanted that secure attachment. In fact, we may even perpetuate the toxic cycles that we experienced growing up because we learned it kept me alive, so it must be good enough. But our job right now is to say, we actually do know a lot more about how to authentically and in a very healthy way nurture that secure attachment so that we don't have to make excuses for our parents, so that we don't have to simply continue doing the cycles that we know weren't healthy. But knowing the good news that our kids are actually wired to like us, to trust us, to believe in us, and to forgive us. And from that place, we can only create healthier dynamics going forward, especially once we understand what it takes to do this.
That's really hopeful, I think, for people to hear. You know, so they're really starting off in a good space, knowing that. I want you to help us understand, why is attachment so important? How does it happen? And what are some things that can help foster a healthy attachment?
Yeah, such a great discussion. And again, I'm so thankful that people like you are willing to go there, because we really do want to create a healthier world. And this is a huge part of how we do that. So what is secure attachment? I'm really going to simplify it as much as I possibly can and say a secure attachment is a state of being where we operate from a place of trust, well-being, and peace within our body. We are in a place relationally where we can trust others, where we can repair when we mess up, where we have more resilience, and frankly, a better chance at all sorts of not only relational benefits in terms of healthier relationships with all sorts of people, but also health benefits. People who have healthy relationships tend to live longer, tend to thrive in literally every way imaginable. So secure attachment is the goal. It's what we want to do. Now, as far as some of the ways we get there, I'm going to talk today about 5 different things that we can do. But before I even get into those 5 things, I'm going to give you a quick summary of one thing you can check on right this second if you have kids And it's a simple question that has been unearthed by beautiful researchers who studied attachment in detail. And that simple question is, are we delighting in our children? When they walk into the room, do our eyes light up? Do we, and I realize this is a controversial one, but are we willing to sometimes put down our phone and say, I'm willing to invest my time in you? Now, that being said, I'm a real live parent. There are absolutely days where I am guilty of scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and not being as engaged as I should really be. But the good news about secure attachment is that we also get to be very human. At no point in our discussion today, Monique, am I going to talk about perfection. That is absolutely not on the table. We do not have to do this perfectly. But if I can, above everything else that I'm going to share as far as specific tips that I'll offer today, if I can answer the question, yes, I am delighting in my child and they are perceiving, they are noticing that I love being in their presence, that is actually the number one thing that I can do to help nurture that secure attachment above and beyond any other parenting choices that I might make.
How does that right there? We got to stop there. I have chills. That is so important, and it will make such an impact. When a child knows that you are happy to see them, your eyes are expressing delight or happiness or joy to see them, that goes right into their heart, and it just opens up so much. I'm so glad that was one of the first things you said. If they could take anything away and just remember that, and the impact that will have on a child is incredible, because you're creating something inside of them that says, I'm delightful. People like to see me. I'm nice to be with. What is that doing for their development?
It's incredible. Yeah, it really is incredible. And then the thing is, it's contagious. Let me get very quickly into some basic brain science. We have something called mirror neurons, where effectively emotions are contagious. It's not any more complicated than that. Emotions are contagious. So let's take that child, and perhaps we can ourselves, as we think about this, imagine when we were a kid. We can bring our inner child into this discussion. Imagine how moving it would have felt to feel so cherished and to be able to take that to the playground, to the classroom, to our siblings, to whatever. Now, to be clear, I am not guaranteeing or even suggesting sibling rivalry is going to go away. That's not what I'm saying here, a whole separate discussion. But if we have children who know that they have inherent value, they have that incredible sense of joy and elation in their body to make contagious to the kids who might be lacking it. And even if this is not their primary caregiver, if a child looks at another child with delight, that other child is going to say, I matter to someone. And at the end of the day, that's what kids have to know. So let me talk about it. One of the primary things I wanted us to be able to take away from this conversation. Doctors Daniel J. Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson have done some beautiful work around attachment, and they talk about what we now refer to as the 4 S's of secure attachment, helping kids feel seen, safe, soothed, and secure. Let me give very specific and easy examples for what each one of those might look like. And again, these are things we can do for all ages. I don't care if you have a 1-month-old or, a 99-year-old baby, and more power to you if you're still listening to this podcast and your kids are 99 years old, right? Math is not my strong suit. I digress. Anyway, when we help a child feel seen, effectively what that means is that we value their true for them emotional experience. So, for example, if I have a child who is just livid that I cut their sandwich the wrong way, right? Triangles instead of squares. Holy moly, I've ruined their life and they are losing the plot. My job as the adult is to help them feel seen in this. What a lot of parents do, which is not what we want to do, is, my goodness, child, just eat your sandwich. Knock it off, right? We don't see them for the struggle that they are feeling. how we could help a child feel seen in this moment is, oh, sweetheart, I understand you really wanted the sandwich to be in a different shape. I understand what it feels like to be upset. You make sense to me. And notice I'm not necessarily going back and switching the sandwich or throwing the old one out and getting a new one. We may or may not do that. But the point is our child feels like my feelings matter and my adult is making an attempt to get me. And I feel supported in my feelings. It's emotional validation. So that's seen. Safe is going to look like, and let's see if I can continue the analogy. I'll bring my improv training in here. If a child is feeling unsafe, let's say that I do that first parenting example that I shared. I am upset with my child for being upset about the shape of their sandwich. So I say, you know what? You don't even get your sandwich right now. Go to your room, and when you're ready to quit your fit, you can come back out and you can eat, but you're eating the sandwich I give you. Well, this child is being punished for expressing their emotions. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is say, and again, this is going to piggyback off emotional validation. You are safe to feel whatever you feel with me. I'm going to offer you a hug if a hug feels accessible. I'm going to offer the words of affirmation you need. I'm going to support you in your discomfort. And by the way, safety particularly comes up if a child is feeling sick, if they are scared, or if they are hurt. In those moments, safety is really a big part of the secure attachment discussion. But keeping it about the sandwich, it's I'm not going to respond punitively. I'm going to respond with support so that you feel safe coming to me. By the way, spoiler alert, the kid who feels safe being upset with you about their sandwich is much more likely to be the kid who feels safe coming to you when they have, I don't know, a breakup in high school or whatever it is, because you have laid the foundation for them coming to you with their authentic feelings and being a safe place to land. Soothed is, and I touched on this just a second ago, notice how these all flow into one another. I am going to help soothe you when you are upset. I'm going to offer that hug. I am going to, here's the magic word for this S, co-regulate with you. I'm going to stay present and hold space for your big feelings. And I want to name very quickly, it can be hard, especially hard for those of us with a trauma history, to hold space for big feelings, especially if our younger self was not made to feel safe in scenarios like that. So we can talk about that separately. But if I can help my child feel safe in their, and soothed in their emotional expression, I've got you, sweetheart. Quick little tip I'll share. One of my mantras that I go to help my child feel soothed when she is struggling is I will say out loud, all of your feelings are safe here, because it's a reminder to her that she gets to express them. It's a reminder to my adult self to make it so that I can soothe her, make it safe for her. And it's also a reminder to my inner child that all of my feelings, even my discomfort, belong here and can be safe. And last but not least, secure means over time, I have practiced the first three S's with enough imperfect regularity that my child knows I can securely rely on the fact that you are more likely than not to show up for me, whether I'm 5 years old and upset about my sandwich, or whether I'm 15, 25, 35, whatever. You have proven to me over time that your emotional GPA, grade point average, is going to be strong enough that now I can trust you to show up for me. I'm going to pause and say, how's this landing, Monique?
I was listening. I was also thinking about if I had this information in the past and how, as much as we would like to think that this is like innate or that common sense, really it isn't always. And having teaching or support during this raising our children is, I think, just like profound. The trauma healing journey, learning how to regulate, but also learning about what a child needs, regulation, parenting, conscious parenting, or safe parenting, again, whatever the term is, learning about those things together are So important.
They really are. And I really want to take just a second to commend everybody who's paying attention now, because this is literally how we heal the world, not only ourselves and our immediate family, but it's how we heal the world, because we know that every action, every interaction that we have with another human being is either going to build them up or tear them down. Those are the only two options. There is really no such thing as a neutral interaction, because even if, let's say I'm at the grocery store, somebody smiles at me, I don't even talk to them, but they smile at me, that's going to improve my day by just a little bit.
Mhm.
If they happen to look away from me, I'm going to think, okay, never mind. And that's going to decrease the quality of my day a little bit. So when we consistently work to improve the quality of our children's lives, they have that to pay forward. And it's an incredibly powerful antidote to a lot of the pain that's in the world today.
Absolutely. I'm focusing really on those who've been impacted by childhood trauma. So here they are wanting to do things differently, create a safe experience for their children, and they're carrying this threat response that gets activated often. We know that children can be triggering. If a child is crying, they can be reminded of themselves crying and all kinds of things. So this dysregulation, do you in your programs and well, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for normalizing that. That is the reality of parenting. We all have triggers. I have literally never met a parent or a human anywhere who doesn't have things that trigger them. And our children specifically can trigger us to a whole new level. We may have memories flood back that we had forgotten about, or we may simply have conscious memories that we do remember where we learned when we were a kid, this is not safe. So, for example, if we learned when we were a child that anger, which isn't actually a healthy emotion that every human is designed to have, but if we learned that our anger was not allowed at home and we were punished for it, let's say we have a child who expresses anger because, again, they're wired for it just like we were. Our inner child is going to say, danger, they can't do this. I can't handle it. This creates such dysregulation in my body that I need to shut it down as fast as possible. So I want to normalize this is incredibly common. And yes, in my programs, and yes, in life, this is one of the most important things that we can do to help create more safety within our body, not to become a quote unquote perfect parent. I already said we're not talking about that in this podcast. The goal is to figure out how can we become little by little less reactive to this? How can we get out of hyper-vigilant mode? And where it might begin, and this is just a very quick little tip that I often share, where it might begin is noticing the times that we feel any degree of safety, no matter how small in our body, even if it has nothing to do with our child. For example, right now, talking to you, Monique, I like your hair. You have beautiful hair. I am feeling safety in the presence of this lovely person who I am talking to over Zoom at the moment. You are just you're just really easy to be around. So I'm feeling more safety in my body than I might if I were with somebody who didn't create that safety in my body. But I can notice right now, thank you for helping create safety in my body. And what I might do is I might actually grab a notebook and make a quick little note and say, I like talking with Monique. I feel safe with her, or safer with her. Sometimes it's relative. And what I start to do over time is I create something called confirmation bias in my body, where when I'm looking at something, the more I see it, the more I believe it to be true and prevalent in my life. So if I feel safe with you, and let's say I go out this afternoon and I see somebody who reminds me even a teeny tiny bit of you, I can say, oh, I feel that safety again because there's familiarity. I haven't even talked about parenting yet, but I'm creating this confirmation bias in my brain of there are safe situations in the world. And once I start to build that up, it will carry over into the parenting moments But I don't start with the parenting. I start with things like I feel safe when I'm drinking my glass of water, whatever it might be. We keep it so simple and tiptoe into safety rather than try to overhaul our life into safety.
This is so good, Sarah, because what you're talking about is what I talk about, and that's really looking at those experiences where we feel okay or feel present or feel good, and it can be very tiny little things throughout the day. And it's important because for many of us, we we don't, some of us don't even know what that feels like. So to begin to notice, acknowledge it, and then stay with it for a minute, it's what Deb Dana calls glimmers. Then you start to see more of them. And I think you were saying like it sets even an expectation that there are more, or you'll start looking for more. And I love that you're including that in this discussion, because you have to talk about that. You have to talk about a person's ability to self-regulate when you're going to talk about parenting and interacting in that relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the thing is, when we do bring it into the parenting space, we do have to start with the moments where we feel safety with our children. And that is not going to begin when our child is in the middle of what I call a big emotional release. Some people call that a tantrum or a meltdown. I prefer to reframe it as a positive to get those big feelings out as an emotional release.
I like that.
Thank you. Yeah, but it's not going to start there because that's going to create dysregulation in our body. It's impossible to be the calm in our child's storm, as the saying goes. I have to start with, you know what? Right now, we're reading a story on the couch, and I feel safety in this moment. Noticing that helps set us up for noticing other moments of safety as well.
It's so interesting. So I had twins. When I think about those safe moments, I have such warm fuzzies when I think about one was on one side, one was on the other. And let's say we were reading a children's book. The three of us, just our energy of it was just such a sweet. And I remember that feeling. Those are the feelings that remind us that there's goodness here. There's the capacity for feeling co-regulation, even if it's just when we read the book to start with. I'm remembering them. And my kids are a lot older now. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And those moments are so powerful because they are still very much alive and well in our bodies. It doesn't matter how big our children get, we remember the feeling of holding them. I can totally attest to the fact that I have been that woman in the grocery store bouncing my baby on my hip when the baby's not even with me. She's 11 years old now, but I still have that bodily response of holding the baby. Like we this feeling, and we can tap into that to help create even more safety in our body because it's the same kid, but we have that memory of safety, and it's really powerful for creating the healing that we really need.
Yes, yes. So I love that you've included that. I have seen some where they don't mention so much about physiology piece or the dysregulation. And to me, it's really central. Like you were saying with the mirror neurons, we can read what's happening in a room because our bodies are sensing, are they threatening? Is it a threatening experience? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's powerful. And frankly, and this is, again, all part of creating secure attachment, because in order for me to create safety for my child, I need to feel safety within my body as well. So I get to get curious about, and I am going to show my humanity once again. My house is kind of messy right now. I too am human, right? But I know that when my house gets just beyond my threshold for clutter or papers out or whatever, I have less safety in my body. So another way where I can say, you know what, if I can even get the papers into a pile, I have more safety in my body and more safety to pass along. So it's really all related. But the thing is, we are all going to have moments in life, and I think it's an important segue here, perhaps, where we do this wrong. You know what, I got upset with my child who flipped out about the thing, or my house was messy and I didn't do anything about it. If that happens to be a trigger for you, it is for me. Messy is all relative, right? Too messy, maybe I should say. But whatever it is, maybe I responded from a place of dysregulation within my body. I was not the peaceful parent that I wanted to be in that moment. Repair is everything. This is where we model for our kids how to be human and how to make amends when they make mistakes. But it starts with us sometimes having the discussion, either in general terms like, you know what, sweetheart? And by the way, I could say this to a young child or an older child. You know what, sweetheart? I haven't shown up for you in the way that I wanted to. And I really want to work on that because I adore you. I delight in you. There's that magic word again. I love you more than I could ever possibly express in words. And here are some specific things that I'm going to do to try to be the kind of parent that you deserve, because we deserve to have peace in our relationship together. Or we can make it really specific. Hey, I'm really sorry I yelled at you this morning on the way to school. I was feeling triggered because we were running late, but that wasn't your fault and you didn't deserve those words. Will you please forgive me? Now, the beautiful thing about kids is they will often say, no, I don't forgive you. And that's actually okay. And it makes sense because according to the Gottman Institute, beautiful psychologists who do very important work in this space, it takes approximately 5 positive interactions with someone to compensate for every single negative reaction that we have with them. So if our kids are saying, I don't forgive you, it's a yet. It's going to take a little bit of time for them feeling safe, seen, soothed, and secure in your presence for it to be fully healed. But when it's fully healed, we can let it go. And we don't have to hold on to the guilt and the shame that we are so good at holding on to as parents. And we can simply say redemption is possible. Forgiveness is possible. And who am I to keep bringing back to life that thing that has already been forgiven? It doesn't have to work that way. So repair when you're not getting it right is so much more important than simply saying, oh, they've probably forgotten about it or we've moved on or whatever. Go back and say the words. It's so incredibly healing. And even for us as trauma survivors, just imagine the impact if somebody would have come to us and said, I really messed up. I am so sorry. Forgiveness is a whole separate discussion, but even hearing those words and that accountability would go a long way for many of us.
It would go a long, long way. So that's absolutely true. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the kind of program that you have to support parents and caregivers.
I'd be happy to. I have a parent support group. It is currently 12 weeks long, although I sometimes offer quick little one-off masterclasses that are often free because I have a heart for helping families heal. But the 12-week program is where we can go more in depth and empower you with 12 different major categories of parenting. The first week is actually focused around parenting from a place of trauma, because we know that so many of us are in that place. But effectively, we spend 12 weeks together in a combination of live Zoom classes, so you can bring your real live parenting scenarios to me and to our small group, where you can get evidence-based, heart-centered support. And by the way, the program is accredited, if that matters to anybody, but you will get live support every single week for 12 weeks. In addition, there are videos that I have made with some of the leading experts in the world about virtually every major area that affects our parenting, from nervous system to attachment to many other things that we know can really move the needle in a positive direction for our family. So you've got access to those videos, you have access to reading to support you. So it really becomes a multi-sensory support environment to help support you as a parent and caregiver to be the kind of person you want to be, but more importantly than that, to feel the kind of peace in your heart that you deserve to feel for yourself as well as with your family. This also happens to be for people who are interested in just the parent support program. Come as you are, that's great, and you can take it more than once if you want to. But this is also phase 1 of a parent coaching certification program that I'm offering. If people get to the point where they say, I want to help others do this work as well, I can help certify you for that. And I would love to get to know you and just support you on your journey.
That's so good. I know that I definitely would have benefited from something like that to also be with other mothers who are or other caregivers. Is it majority women or all women?
Interestingly, it is mostly women, but I do some men who come through. And as I mentioned, people who don't even have kids yet. And I also, on occasion, have a grandparent or even a great parent who says, I want to make amends and I want to have access to my grandchildren or my great grandchildren so that my kids feel safe with me in their life. Really powerful.
Wow. You also said that you would give my community, those who sign up, 20% discount. So I will leave all the information and the discount code in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know this is a huge topic. There's really so much to learn. Thank
Thank you so
you.
much for having me, and thank you to everyone who listens and cares about this stuff. It's so important.